Welcome back to Retro Tech Toys. Today I want to look at the C64 Mini and Maxi, or the C64 full size, whatever you want to call it. I call it the Maxi, even though that's not its official name. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings. People think that you can only play video games with it, and I've seen some other questions about running different things just besides video games, and it's totally possible. As you can see, you can program in BASIC almost exactly like you'd program with a C64, like an actual Commodore 64. And I'll be happy to include a link to a book or two that I have found on Amazon that teaches you how to do that, specifically geared toward the C64 remakes. I think it's a really interesting resource, and programming's not all you can do. Let's check out Geos, for example. Geos is an operating system that has a graphical interface. I'm going to do a whole thing on this later to show you how you can bring in programs like GeoPaint and GeoWrite to actually use on the C64. It's a little bit tricky if you don't know what you're doing. If you just try to mount the Geos image, you're not going to have any programs. And there's a trick, and I'm going to do a video on it later. But as you can see, you can do a lot of things in Geos. You can use Geos Paint to paint landscapes and sprites for 8-bit games. You can make maps with it. There's all sorts of things that you can use with the Paint program. It's actually pretty neat for a Commodore 64. You've got plenty of colors to choose from, and you can make some decently interesting projects with this. So I'd find that highly useful for a retro programmer. And that's not the only thing you can do with Geos. There's also word processing and forming calculations and organizing your business. If you were in the 80s, of course, now there are a lot more useful tools that you would use for Microsoft Windows or Mac OS or what have you. But we're sitting here looking at the C64 Maxi. So yeah, you've got Paint and you've got GeoWrite, and there's a spell check, and there are many more applications that, as long as you have the ROM file for it, you can bring it right in. So you can take that D64 and mount it to your virtual disk and then load up Geos, and you're good to go. And like I said, I'll do a video on that later. I just wanted to show you that Geos is a really big thing that you can actually use, and use it pretty fully on the C64 Mini and full size, and also I'm sure the VIC-20. So moving right along, we can also use Commodore 64 Logo. Logo is a programming instruction tool that benefits kids. It shows them logic, and by going through the commands and making the turtle there, that little triangle is the turtle, by the way, making the turtle move, you can do certain things and perform certain actions, and it gets them ready to learn programming so that they can go on later and learn how to code in various languages. But it's a really useful tool if you wanted to go back and revisit some of the tools that we used for learning back in the 80s. So, I mean, you can't get any more retro than that. And here's a big question. Here's one that I've seen people ask a bunch. Can you run CP/M? And basically, what I've seen is everybody has said, no, you can't run CP/M on the C64 Mini or full size, because it ran slow on the C64, like the actual Commodore 64, and it's likely that it wouldn't run. But here's a version that I found right here, CP/M version 2.2. It does run. It is unbearably slow, and I'm going to show you a little bit of that right now. And if you're curious about CP/M, basically it's sort of like MS-DOS. It's an operating system that's command line based, and it works a little bit like DOS. As you can see, if you want to find the files on your disk, you type in dir, so it pulls up the directory of the A drive, which is what we're on right now. If you had multiple disk drives, then you could go to those disk drives and do whatever you need to do, and when you find the file that you want to run, just like in DOS, you just type in the name of the file and it runs. So I'm going to do a more in-depth video on CP/M also. I might actually combine the CP/M and Geos videos, we'll see. But I just wanted to show you guys that this does run, and I've seen this question asked a lot. Can you run CP/M? And the answer is usually no, you can't. I mean, it's slow, but yes, you absolutely can run it on the C64 Mini, full size, and the VIC-20. So there's that question. Hopefully I've answered that for everyone. Moving on, you can do a lot more than play games. So you can also play Street Fighter. Everybody's worst nightmare. Street Fighter for the Commodore 64. I mean, is it really a game anyway? I would argue more or less it's like a demonstration on how a game should never ever be made. Okay, I'm sorry. You know I had to make the Street Fighter joke. It's one of the worst games of the Commodore 64. But that's all I have for today. I just wanted to show you guys that you could do a lot more than game on this machine. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many other programs and applications that maybe you remember using when you were younger or just starting out. And, they'll probably work if you can find the D64 for them. And hopefully I'll be back to my regular recording schedule with more in-depth videos next Saturday. I'm still fixing up my new studio space. And that's what I have for today. Just remember, if you run any of these files, you may have to add in file name flags on the files themselves. And you can go to Retro Games website. They're the creators of the C64, and you can download the instruction manual and it'll show you all about that. So go ahead and do that before you try any of this, so you have no problems running any of these. Now be sure to check out my Twitter account, and be sure to check out the Retro Tech Toys website at retrotechtoys.com. By the way, this is our 100th video, so thank you so much for liking and subscribing and for following along, and we'll see you next time.